purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person can deny.
Good afternoon. My name is Howard Thompson. I'm your host for this segment of Freethought Forum. That delightful little tune you were listening to is called Our Thoughts Are Free. It dates from 1521 peasant revolts in Europe, and it is a popular song still with many free thought groups and freethinker types of ideals in Europe, and of course here in Texas, where we love the song too. Free thought in general is a term used to designate the ideas and ideals of people who were called freethinkers, who date to from before 1700 in Europe. And their ideals include things in their full development by the 1800s, such as a commitment to social justice and economic justice and irreligiousness, and they were opposed to separation or mixing of church and state. There were, in Texas, a number of freethinkers. Around San Antonio, there were German-speaking freethinkers, and the rest of Texas, English-speaking freethinkers. And the German freethinkers here in Texas had a good presence around Comfort, Texas, which they founded. And that leads me to our primary guest for today, who is St. Shimi. She is a professional dancer here in San Antonio with the Jumpstart Performance Company, and my co-host Sally Chizek will help me talk with Miss Shimi. And the reason that the background I gave you on freethinking is pertinent for Miss Shimi is that she is dancing in a show called Southern Discomfort, which is put on by the Jumpstart Performance Company, and you'll have to forgive me here. That's going to be at the Blue Star Arts Complex, Building B, corner of South Alamo and Probont. And the tickets do cost money, but we can't mention the price as a nonprofit station. But you can get information by calling 227-JUMP. And at Freethought Forum, we're quite excited about the show that Ms. Shimi is going to be in. Here's a little promotional piece on it with a picture of Miss Shimi, and if I understand correctly, that's you by the Freethinker Rock in the Comfort Park?
Yes.
You all went to Comfort to take these, and there's going to be a companion show called Comfort, which is also, this picture is taken at the Rock in Comfort Park, and it's also about freethinking. And I don't know too much about the show, but my understanding is from the description that you were going to have some type of dance expression of free-thinking, freewheeling cowboys and Indians in Texas in the 1800s.
Well, yes and no. Diane Monroe's play Comfort is more specifically about the history of freethinkers in Comfort, Texas.
Yes,
It spins off of a specific incident, a specific historical incident that has to do with the Battle of the Nueces, and so hers is more of the historical context.
Okay.
And mine is it's not just going to be dance. We're calling it dance theater because I also talk in this show, as I do in my other solo shows. Mine is more about my personal journey from a religious fundamentalist upbringing in Southeast Asia to coming to Texas and being an atheist here, and then discovering that there's this wonderful free-thinking history that, most people in Texas either don't know about or don't talk about. So my show is a little more personal, but it's a different kind of story. And I do mention some of the freethinker history, but it's not a major part of the show, not as much as I thought it was going to be.
Okay, so it sounds like, and I'm not a theater aficionado, but it sounds to me when you talk about your personal background as a religious fundamentalist before you came to the United States.
No, I was never a religious.
Oh, no, you were never, okay.
No. Actually, I do mention in my piece that I pretty much was an atheist from the time I was about 12.
Okay.
And apart from all the major political, theological, and philosophical problems that I had with the concept of a God. I do say in my show that I didn't want to give up 10% of my allowance every Sunday.
Oh.
So,
that was an incentive.
Yes, it was a major incentive to thinking about, why was religion supposed to be so important, and if it was, why couldn't I bring myself to care? And I spent the rest of my life in Singapore trying to please my parents and just pretending that I was into all of this religion stuff and being very unhappy, and finally came to be my own person and be the atheist that I always was when I went to college, and didn't have to wake up every morning, every Sunday to go to church.
Well, what about your parents? Were they religious?
Well, they still are.
They still are.
My entire immediate family, they're very devout, very sincere Christians, and that's fine. I just, don't want to have to pray with them or read their literature and so on. And they're still in denial about that, but I'm very happy and very firm about being an atheist, and I make no bones about that.
Well, how long have you been dancing, and how did you get into being a performer, such that this would be something you'd want to express?
Well, I've always been interested in performance, in theater, and writing my own stuff, and dancing since I was in school, all the way back in Singapore. But I think that partly because of my parents' religious feelings, they always had a problem with me dancing, because, it was, against the Word of God, just a favorite phrase of theirs. And so I didn't really get to dance until I went to college and started taking a bunch of different art forms, African, Cuban, modern, and so on. And then when I came to San Antonio, I discovered belly dancing, which is also another kind of strange thing to discover in Texas, I guess. But like the history of Freethinkers, there's like this whole secret history of belly dance enthusiasm all over Texas, oddly enough. And so that's the major discipline that my dancing is spun out of. So it's kind of what I do in the show. It's a mix of those kinds of training and just stuff that I come up with, I guess.
So is then, if I hear what you're saying, is that you feel that your primary expression of dance now is belly dancing, but you have a variety of other dance styles that you do? Yeah, I dance with another troupe in town, Caravan Middle Eastern Dance Troupe. So that's the purer form of the dance. But what I do in my shows is kind of mix it up a little bit with all the other kinds of movement-based work that I do. So it's not always completely recognizable as one kind of thing or the other. Well, all I know of belly dancing, I guess I've seen on TV and the movies. I was in Turkey for a while in the Army, but I never saw any belly dancing there. I knew that they had it, but just looking at you, you're so thin and svelte. You don't have much of a belly. That's the first thought that comes to mind is you're not one of these larger, more well-endowed types of women that I've seen portrayed. And how does this? Is that an issue with belly dancing, or it really doesn't matter? Well, I think that's as much a stereotype as is the stereotype of atheists being, humorless communists plotting to overthrow the nation. So, it's all kinds of different women come to the dance. And they come to it for different things. In fact, there's a major kind of trend in the dance form towards, goddess worship and all of that, which I don't get into. I like Middle Eastern dance because it's a technically demanding form, and so how it plays out on your body really depends on how you work on the dance. I mean, there are a lot of women who may not look very fit, but they can dance circles around me in different styles. So,
well, Shimi dances very well. We did get to see her dance when they have a program for women's issues, and she's a very nice dancer. Very good. So it doesn't matter whether her belly is not too big.
Well, that is my very unprofessional observation.
I do want to say that at that march, I did perform a very political solo dance that had Middle Eastern dance styling, but was about issues that I cared about, and that's the kind of theater that I like to do. I like to take the aesthetic form and try to say something important with it. So this piece about atheism has been a long time coming.
Yeah. Well, for the people who turned in late or channel hopping, we're talking to St. Shimi, who is a belly dancer who has a performance called Southern Discomfort, and that's going to be on February 9th to the 25th, Fridays and Sundays at 8 p.m., and you can get information about it by calling 227-JUMP, and the shows are going to be at the Blue Star Arts Complex, Building B, corner of South Alamo and Provence. So that's 227-JUMP if you want information. When did you first come up with the idea for the specific show that you're going to be performing this February, Southern Discomfort, and how did you think about putting it together and what you wanted it to express?
Well, Diane Monroe and I have been good friends for a few years now, and we've actually been collaborating on these theater evenings this is the third time.
Okay.
And we always started out talking about major issues that we wanted to discuss. And our first evening together was called Continental Drift, and it was about the feeling of being displaced. And so that was our first big issue, the idea of belonging. And then the next year we wanted to do something about gender and race and politics, so that was Out of Bounds, and my piece was called Lost in Translation, and it was about stereotypes of Indian women and Indian mythology and kind of putting a feminist spin on those. And so we kept the big one for last because one of the main things that we bonded over was that we were both unabashed atheists. And how difficult it was for both of us coming from religious backgrounds that, really were not very supportive of the whole notion. So we really bonded over that, and we talked about how really being an atheist that's the real scarlet letter of this new millennium. That's what the A stands for. Not for adultery, clearly, when you look at how Republican leaders behave, but really like saying that you're an atheist, saying that you're an atheist is it's like the thing that's verboten, if you're not supposed to. So we wanted to do shows that was about the topic that wouldn't be just, standing there, lecturing people or talking about our pain. And so it took us a while to think about it. And then around the time that the whole controversy over The Rock erupted, a couple of years ago, we realized, there's our hook. There's a history in Texas about free thinking that, at least I wasn't completely aware of. And there's this great rock. It's such a powerful visual metaphor. And so we drove out there. We took pictures with it on Christmas Day. And so then we started talking about how we would, make our shows work. And so Diane is really an excellent writer when it comes to historical plays. She finds the really interesting facts and turns them into wonderful drama. So her play is called Comfort, and mine ended up kind of being a more poetic, personal kind of parallel journey, like what it's like to kind of finally feel at home in Texas, even though it's a really strange place to end up when you think about it. I also say in my piece that my parents, and this is true, they would tell their friends that I had moved to New York to do theater because they didn't understand how I could possibly want to go from Dartmouth College in New Hampshire to San Antonio, Texas, to make my living in theater. It just didn't make sense to them. So, for a while I also thought about, why was I in Texas? Why am I still here? And in some odd way, discovering all of this free-thinking history kind of makes it make a weird kind of sense. So the piece is kind of goes back and forth. It goes through 2 or 3 major events in my childhood that kind of got me to be really firm about my atheist beliefs, and it's also kind of this exploration of how Texas is a land that's filled with paradoxes. It's all these vast spaces, all this beauty, but it's also filled with small-mindedness, and you have like the bows to religion here, and George W. Bush. I'm really embarrassed. Like I have to make this major disclaimer to my friends. I didn't vote for him. No, but at the same time, there's all of this freethinker history. That's part of what makes Texas so strange and wonderful at the same time. So in a way, it's about my coming home.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I was just going to say, how did you get to Texas, or why, or how did that happen?
Well, when I was at Dartmouth, I majored in women's studies and theater, and I specialized in theater that was largely political. So when I graduated, I was looking for someplace where I would be free to do those things, and I wouldn't have to be doing, the 10th production of The Music Man in, the 3rd month or whatever. And so I started looking through handbooks, and Jumpstart Performance Company had a really great description of their mission. And part of our mission is to give voice to people in the community whose voices are not ordinarily heard in mainstream theater. And we're also all about finding different ways and mediums to, break the mold aesthetically on stage. So I thought that sounded really interesting, so I made a cold call to the director of the theater, and he thought I was just kidding when I said, well, no, I don't know anyone in San Antonio. I don't know where you are, don't know anything about downtown San Antonio, but I'll just show up. And so he said, yeah, okay, sure, we'll see you when you get here. And I took a train from New Hampshire, so it took me 3 days to get here with my boxes, and then I just showed up. And I stayed for a long time as an intern, so they finally made me a company member because clearly I wasn't going to go away. And then a year or two after that, I thought, I'd taken enough time off from doing my own work because I wanted to see what other people were doing, what I could learn, because I think there's an arrogance about, feeling like your life is incredibly fascinating and worth doing solo work about. As soon as you come out of college, you barely lived really. And so I took a few years off, and then I started doing my own work. So.
Well, the good news about being out of college is you have the energy for it. When we get older and have more experience, and something to express, you just get too tired to say it sometimes.
And she was very brave too. I don't think I would just pick up and go. I'm not that brave. I think that's pretty brave. Thank you.
Well, the show itself then, from your description, is going to be kind of alternate with some dance segments, which will, I guess, express certain types of emotions or feelings or conflict or resolution or whatever, and then you will also have some segments where you basically
which
narrate.
Are spoken and performed. So all of my solo work combines movement and spoken word and the occasional theatrical trick or two. Although this time, I think we're planning to make it so you can actually see the illusion, because we don't want anyone to think that there's a miracle happening on stage. It just wouldn't be. It's not quite what we want with the show. It's not the point. So.
Well, then it's going to be possible then to see your show on a Sunday afternoon, and then go out to eat and come back and see the Diane's show.
Correct. Although it's the other way around. Diane's show is the matinee, and then mine is in the evening. We're for the last 2 years we've done both our shows in the same evening, but it really takes a lot out of everyone who has to turn the show around. It makes the audience has to stay longer. So it's an experiment for us to try doing the shows kind of in reps. So we alternate performances, and also because the shows are still linked. Hers is Comfort and mine is Southern Discomfort. So we want people to be able to come see both shows, and since we can't mention prices and all that, true socialist fashion, I'm all for it. When you call the theater, we will explain how we will give you an incentive to come see both shows.
Yes.
But I think we can say that the prices are modest.
Yes, they are. They're still amongst the lowest for theater and other kinds of arts in San Antonio, definitely. So. Call us. Someone will answer your questions.
Well, about how long is the show last? I have no idea how long something like this would be. I mean, if somebody wanted me to get up and dance, I'd plot out about a 4-minute show. Then I'd be winded.
Well, most of my shows tend to be about 50 minutes long. We haven't put this together yet, in its entirety, but I'm guessing it's about that long, because my philosophy is to keep it, to the point and about 50 minutes, because I really think that's as much as an audience can stand when it's solo work, no matter how great it is, short attention spans and all. And Diane's play is a full-length play, and so I'm sure hers will be somewhere between an hour and an hour and a half. So you'll get good value for your money, and you'll get to support some unabashed atheist artwork.
Well, that's something that we should all do, for sure.
I think so, because, what I still find interesting, and I haven't kind of worked my way around it, is that one of the things about religious belief is that, people then say that it produces these great works of art. Religion produces these great works of art, and people find it very easy to attribute a spiritual dimension to artwork. But then what is the quality or sensibility of a work that comes right out and calls itself atheist? Is there, what is that like? Are you not supposed to feel anything because to feel something would have to mean that you were spiritual, which I deny completely. I really have a problem with people who insist on trying to make my work spiritual or try to argue with me about, why I'm an atheist. Well, if you love nature, then you must feel something. Well, no, I like trees, I like the water. It doesn't mean I want to worship them or that, I'm swimming in the goddess or something. And people find that very hard to accept, that I'm very clear and decisive about my lack of belief in, fetishizing ritual, let's say.
Well, there are people who would then say that the devil made you do it.
Yes, and actually, there is a major section of my show that kind of deals with that, because one of the more colorful and depressing episodes of my childhood was my parents' flirtation with an extremely fundamentalist, charismatic church that specialized in exorcisms. And so, because I asked a lot of questions of my Sunday school teachers that they didn't like. For example, if Gandhi couldn't go to heaven because he never accepted Jesus, does that mean that if Hitler had accepted Jesus before he died, it would have been okay for him to go to heaven? Stuff like that. They didn't really like that, so they felt like, I had a demon inside me, so they tried to exorcise me, actually. And it was surprisingly boring and frustrating and annoying, and it really turned me, and that, at that point I decided I was definitely an atheist. I did not just not believe in Christianity. I didn't want to have to pick anything else either. I just wanted to be left alone and be a free agent. So that's a major part of the show. Just that whole concept that the devil must be in you for you to be saying such things or doing such things.
Well, you have a lot of courage to resist that as a youth to go through that. I was an atheist since I was about 15, but I have a suspicion that I'm conservative-minded enough that if I had been in a fundamentalist family instead of kind of a laissez-faire Episcopalian, hardly ever go to church family, that I might not have ever become an atheist. It would have just imprinted me so strongly when I was younger.
Well, I think it's because I'm a theater person. Like, I think even then I started to analyze it from a theatrical point of view. Mass hysteria, movements kind of traveling across the church. Like all the trappings, all of the habits. It was really hard to. It's really hard to believe in something like once you see the machinery. You know what I mean? And so I think that actually helped. I actually think that if my parents had been Methodist all their life, I would probably have just been a very unenthusiastic Methodist, maybe. Maybe, I don't know. But I think that being force-fed all that charismatic stuff actually helped to solidify my own personal views.
Well, something like the Wizard of Oz?
Something like the Wizard of Oz, yes.
The idea of Bush looking for a brain comes to mind, but we won't go there right now.
I do get in a few jokes at his expense, so, for nothing else, come see the show.
That's worth the modest price.
It's worth it just for that, because it's really scary that right now in America, there's this whole kind of like just nodding to religion just as this thing that's supposed to make you seem like a better person. It really irritated me during the elections when both candidates were trying to outdo themselves with like this fake piety. And, maybe they really do believe the stuff that they believe in. And I don't care, but I don't want to hear about it, and I don't want them to make me feel like I'm immoral because I choose not to believe in what they believe in. So it really bothered me all the way through. And of course, when Bush in his acceptance speech asked us all to pray for everything that moved, the air was turning blue with my cursing.
How many times did you hear "God Bless America" during the before the election?
Right, just too many times. It's sometimes when they say it often enough, it's as meaningless as the things people say to you when you protest. We held a little protest outside the Alamo actually on Inauguration Day, and a lot of tourists came up to us and said, "If you don't like it, then leave." And what does that mean? And in any case, who's the tourist here?
Go back to where you come from.
Yeah, what does that mean? It's a really glib sentiment. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, you're here in San Antonio, and I guess that means that none of your family is in San Antonio or Texas, maybe. So you're separated at least distance-wise from
Yes.
your family.
Yes. Although I do get prayed for when they call me, and I let them. I hold the phone away and come back at the end of the prayer. It's important to them that they do that, and that's fine. But I think I've been very clear with them about where I stand, so they can't say that I misled them anymore.
Oh, do you have any brothers and sisters
I do. I have a very, very sweet and wonderful younger brother who is a very devout Christian, so it really bothers him that I'm an atheist. And amongst the many things that that I did in college that I shared with him, he said that this was the thing that upset him the most, and he keeps sending me tracts and pamphlets and so on. And, every once in a while I ask him how he'd feel if I sent him back stuff that proved, that God didn't exist, and he doesn't answer me. He just sends me more tracts, so I hang on to them, use them in the show.
Well, for those of you who have turned in late, we're talking with S.T. Shimi, who has a theater dance performance called Southern Discomfort, which is February 9th through the 25th, I think it is. And that's going to be at the Blue Star Arts Complex, Building B, corner of South, Alamo, and Probont. And you can get information on it by calling 227-JUMP. And since this is a nonprofit station, we can't mention prices, but they are modest. And there's going to be a companion piece performed alternating by Diane Monroe called Comfort, which is a more historical piece about the Freethinkers in Comfort, Texas, and a family and a daughter in particular, I believe, who went to the Nueces battlefield to recover remains of her brother after the Battle of Nueces in 1862, in which Confederate Rangers killed about 35 Freethinkers and other Germans who were trying to get out to Mexico so they didn't have to fight for the Confederacy.
Right. It's sort of Antigone with an atheist spin.
Yes. What was the most fun thing about preparing for this performance for you?
Most fun thing, I think getting to dramatize certain events that were crucial to my development as an atheist, I guess. I think the most fun section for me to work on, even though it was hard at first to try and write it all down, was the section that's called The Devil in You, which is about that one particular episode. And I think also what has been really good about this for me is getting all these free-floating ideas that were just kind of bobbing around my head about what it's like to be an atheist in Asia, and then to come over to Texas and be an atheist here, and how all these things fit together about being in Texas and kind of having this love-hate relationship with it. So it's always gratifying when it all kind of gels into one piece, and sometimes you don't even know that it's happening until you're right in the middle of the process. While you're still writing it, you're thinking, why did someone tell me this was not a good idea? It was when you have a big idea, a big theme in mind, sometimes it's really hard to kind of narrow it down and write something that's specific. And I also have this great fear of theater that's self-indulgent, and it's all about like one's own personal pain and all of that. So that was a major challenge for me, to try and write a piece that I could then say has a strong political message and is personal, but also doesn't make the audience feel like they're sitting through therapy with me.
And a lot of the audience will appreciate that, I'm sure. We have about 30 seconds to wrap up here. I'm talking with S.T. Shimi, who is a dancer, belly dancer primarily, an atheist, who's giving a performance called Southern Discomfort, February 9th through the 25th. This is Freethought Forum. I'm getting the wrap-up, and we'll see you all later.
As I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny. Decadent and sin fry, no